Millionaire CEO came to buy an engagement ring for his fiancée. Then he saw his ex behind the counter holding a little boy. Robert Campbell stepped out of a black town car and paused outside Arden and Vale Fine Jewelry, adjusting the cuff of his sleeve like someone who had practiced confidence for years. Cameras weren't here today, but he carried himself as if they might appear at any moment. Inside, soft piano notes drifted through the showroom, while polished glass counters reflected rows of diamonds waiting to be chosen. "Good afternoon, sir," a consultant greeted with a welcoming smile. "I'm looking for an engagement ring," Robert said, voice calm, almost rehearsed. He had built companies from nothing, signed contracts worth more than most people saw in a lifetime, and convinced himself that love could be decided just as efficiently. Iris would appreciate elegance, precision, something flawless. Yet as he stepped deeper into the store, a quiet thought lingered at the edge of his mind. Why does this feel like another business decision? Before the consultant could lead him further, a soft laugh crossed the room. It wasn't loud or attention-seeking, just warm and familiar enough to pull his focus away from the glittering displays. Roberts turned. Behind another counter stood Louisa Akins. For a moment, the world narrowed to a single point, her calm eyes lifting toward him, recognition settling slowly between them. 3 years vanished without warning. "Roberts," she said almost gently. He didn't answer right away. The careful composure he carried into every boardroom slipped, replaced by something quieter. "Louisa, I didn't expect to see you here. Life has a way of changing plans," she replied, her tone professional yet kind. He nodded, unsure what to do with the sudden rush of memories that arrived without invitation. Only when Louisa shifted slightly did Roberts notice the small boy tucked against her side, crayons scattered across a coloring book on the counter. The child looked up with curious eyes, studying him without hesitation. "Mama, is he here to buy something?" the boy asked. "Mama." The word settled heavily in Robert's chest. Louisa gave a gentle smile. "Yes, sweetheart, he is." She turned back to Roberts, posture straightening as if placing a quiet boundary between past and present. "How can I help you today?" "I came for a ring," he admitted. "Of course." She gestured toward a display tray, movement steady. He watched the way she brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear, the same small gesture he remembered from years ago. Success had taken him far, but standing here now felt strangely grounding. As Louisa arranged several rings under the lights, Roberts found himself speaking more slowly than usual. "You look at peace," he said. She tilted her head slightly. "Peace is underrated." He let out a soft breath. "Maybe." Louisa studied him for a moment. "Tell me about the woman you're proposing to." "She's accomplished," he began. "Smart. Everyone admires her." "And how does she make you feel?" Louisa asked quietly. The question lingered longer than he expected. "Ever thought you were moving forward, only to realize something inside you stayed behind? Ever reached a goal and still felt unsure why it mattered?" Roberts didn't say those thoughts aloud, but they hovered between them, unspoken yet understood. He glanced at the child again, noticing how easily Louisa balanced warmth with strength, qualities he once relied on more than he admitted. Roberts lifted one of the rings, watching the light catch against the surface. "You always had good taste," he said. Louisa smiled faintly. "It's part of the job." The boy waved shyly. "I'm Torres," he said. "Nice to meet you," Roberts replied, crouching slightly to meet his eyes. "What are you drawing?" "A rocket," Torres said proudly. "Mama says you can go anywhere if you try." Roberts hesitated, remembering nights long ago when Louisa encouraged him with those same words. "If you're new here," Louisa added softly while handing him another ring, "we believe every piece tells a story." Her tone felt like a subtle welcome, not just to the store, but to anyone listening, watching, or quietly reflecting along with them. The moment didn't stall the flow. Instead, it made the scene feel more personal, more grounded. Roberts placed the ring back onto the velvet tray. It was perfect, brilliant, admired, expected. Yet something inside him refused to settle. "What's his name again?" he asked, glancing toward Torres. "Torres," Louisa repeated gently. The boy grinned, holding up his drawing. Roberts took the page, folding it carefully before slipping it into his pocket without thinking. "I came here certain," he admitted quietly. "Now I'm not sure what I'm choosing." Louisa met his gaze without judgment. "Sometimes clarity arrives when you slow down enough to listen to yourself." He nodded, absorbing her words. "Before we begin, if you enjoy powerful stories about love, second chances, and real-life choices, take a second to subscribe to Mr. Cooper Stories. It helps this channel grow, and it keeps stories like this coming your way." The next part of Robert's story isn't about a ring at all. It's about a truth he never expected to face. and as the piano notes drifted through Arden and Vale fine jewelry, Roberts realized the decision he walked in ready to make had already begun to change. Roberts Campbell's mornings rarely belonged to him. By 7, the glass-walled conference room on the 32nd floor of Campbell Dynamics was already filled with advisors studying projections that climbed higher with every quarter. Screens glowed with numbers, analysts spoke in measured tones, and assistants moved quietly along the edges of the room, placing coffee where it would be needed before anyone asked. Roberts sat at the head of the table, posture straight, expression composed. He listened more than he spoke, a habit that made people believe he was always 10 steps ahead. Expansion into Austin is moving faster than expected, one executive said. Press coverage has been overwhelmingly positive. Roberts gave a short nod. Good. Keep the rollout focused. No distractions. He sounded calm, confident, the version of him the public knew. Across the table, a junior analyst hesitated before presenting a risk assessment. Roberts watched him carefully, then softened his tone just enough to ease the tension. You're allowed to disagree, he said. That's why you're here. A few people exchanged surprised glances. Moments like this helped build his reputation, the decisive leader who also listened. Cameras loved that balance. Investors trusted it. The meeting ended with polite applause, something that still felt strange to Roberts even after years of success. As people filtered out, his assistant approached with a tablet. You've got an interview in 20 minutes, she said. They're focusing on your personal life this time. The engagement rumors are everywhere. He paused for a fraction of a second. Let's keep it about the company, he replied. She smiled knowingly. I'll try. The studio was only a short drive away, but it felt like stepping into another version of reality. Lights softened every edge, hosts leaned forward with practiced curiosity, and the conversation flowed as if nothing difficult existed beyond the cameras. Roberts, you've built something extraordinary before 35, the interviewer said. What keeps you motivated? He answered easily. I like solving problems, building something that lasts. And the engagement rumors, she added with a playful grin. He gave a controlled laugh. Iris and I keep our lives private. The host nodded, clearly hoping for more, but Roberts steered the discussion back to business strategy. He knew how to maintain a polished image without revealing too much. Afterward, as he stepped out of the studio, applause faded quickly. Outside, the noise of the city filled the space where the audience's energy had been. His driver opened the car door, and Roberts slid into the back seat, loosening his tie slightly. For a moment, he stared at his reflection in the tinted window. Successful, admired, certain. Yet the silence in the car felt heavier than usual. Later that afternoon, he met Iris at a private art gallery where investors often gathered. The space felt elegant without trying too hard. Soft lighting, quiet conversations, and carefully chosen music floating through the room. Iris stood near a sculpture, speaking with 2 venture capitalists who listened closely to every word she said. She turned when she noticed Roberts approaching, her smile bright and effortless. There you are, she said, leaning in for a brief embrace that felt more like a greeting than a reunion. Everyone's been asking about you, he greeted the investors, exchanging confident handshakes. The conversation shifted quickly to market trends and upcoming projects, both of them moving through the discussion like partners who understood the same language. You two are unstoppable, one investor joked. Power couple goals. Iris laughed lightly. We keep each other ambitious. Roberts nodded, though something about the phrase lingered longer than he expected. As the crowd shifted, Iris guided him toward a quieter corner. My parents want to host a dinner next month, she said. They're excited about the engagement. It's moving quickly, he replied. That's not a bad thing, she said, tilting her head slightly. We know what we want. Her certainty should have reassured him. Instead, he found himself watching the way she spoke, precise, composed, always focused on outcomes. Are you nervous? She asked, studying him. No, he answered automatically. Just busy. She reached for his hand, her grip warm but brief. You thrive on busy, she said. That's one of the reasons I admire you. He smiled politely, though the words felt more like a compliment to his achievements than to who he was as a person. That evening, Roberts returned to his penthouse overlooking the bay. The space was immaculate. Clean lines, modern furniture, art selected by professionals rather than personal taste. Everything reflected success, yet very little reflected warmth. He set his phone on the counter, but notifications kept lighting the screen. Congratulatory messages, invitations, business updates. One text stood out, Iris reminding him about a charity gala next week, another from a colleague celebrating a new deal. He scrolled past them, pausing when he noticed an old photo buried in his gallery. It showed him years earlier, standing on a small rooftop with Louisa beside him, both of them laughing at something outside the frame. He locked the phone quickly, as if the image might change his mood if he looked too long. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. His assistant had arranged for a stylist to deliver suit options for the upcoming proposal dinner. Fabric samples lay neatly arranged across the table, each one labeled and ready for approval. Roberts studied them briefly before signing off on the selections. Decisions came easily when they involved strategy or presentation. Personal choices felt different. The next morning began with another meeting, another set of projections, another round of praise from people who believed he had everything figured out. During a brief break, one of his senior partners approached him. "You've built a life most people dream about," the partner said. "Don't forget to enjoy it." Roberts nodded politely. "I will," but as the day continued, he noticed how conversations blurred together, achievements discussed in numbers, plans measured by growth rather than meaning. At lunch, Iris joined him at a rooftop restaurant favored by executives. She spoke enthusiastically about a joint venture she wanted them to consider after the engagement. "We could become a major influence in both markets," she said. "Think about the impact." He listened, appreciating her drive, yet feeling strangely detached from the excitement she described. "Does it ever feel like we're always moving toward the next thing?" he asked quietly. She raised an eyebrow. "That's how progress works. And if we slowed down?" She smiled, amused. "You don't slow down, Roberts. That's why you're successful." Her words were meant as praise, but they lingered with a weight he couldn't ignore. By late afternoon, Roberts found himself reviewing engagement ring designs sent by Arden and Vale Fine Jewelry. The options were flawless, rare diamonds, elegant settings, symbols of status that matched the image he had carefully built. His assistant stepped into the office. "They're expecting you tomorrow to finalize the selection." He glanced at the designs again. Each one looked perfect on paper, just like everything else in his life. "Schedule it," he said. When she left, the office fell quiet. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city moved with steady energy below. People crossed streets, laughed outside cafes, carried on with lives that seemed less structured yet somehow more alive. Roberts leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes briefly. He had spent years building a future that made sense, partnerships that aligned, plans that advanced, relationships that fit seamlessly into his goals. And yet, somewhere beneath the success, a question began to form. Was he choosing this life because it felt right, or because it looked right? He didn't have an answer. The only certainty was the appointment waiting for him the next day. The moment when he would walk into a jewelry store, choose a ring, and step fully into the future everyone expected him to embrace. What he didn't know yet was that the carefully balanced image he built was about to shift in a way no business strategy could prepare him for. Roberts arrived early at the private terrace restaurant Iris had chosen, the kind of place where conversations stayed low and discreet, while the skyline stretched wide beyond the glass railing. A quiet string quartet played near the entrance, adding elegance without demanding attention. It was exactly the sort of environment Iris thrived in, refined, structured, admired. She was already there when he stepped out of the elevator. Iris Winstanley stood near the edge of the terrace speaking with two industry leaders, her posture straight, her smile polished yet effortless. When she noticed Roberts approaching, she excused herself gracefully and crossed the floor to meet him. "You made it," she said, her voice warm but measured. "I wasn't sure your schedule would let you escape. I always make time for important things," he replied. She tilted her head slightly, studying him. "That sounded like a line from one of your interviews." He gave a small laugh. "Maybe I've done too many." They took their seats at a table overlooking the city. The server poured sparkling water, and Iris immediately shifted into conversation. Upcoming projects, investors she wanted him to meet, a charity event that could strengthen both of their public profiles. Roberts listened carefully. He admired her clarity, the way she moved through conversations with purpose. Their partnership made sense on paper. Together, they were admired, respected, a pair people described as unstoppable. "You've been quiet," she said after a while, setting her glass down gently. "Long day?" "Just thinking," he replied. "About the proposal?" she asked, a hint of curiosity behind her composed expression. He hesitated before nodding. "It's a big step." Her smile softened, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "It's the right step," she said. "Our lives already align in so many ways." He couldn't argue with that. Their schedules fit, their ambitions matched, and their families approved. Everything about their relationship felt logical, strong, stable, predictable. Yet as the conversation continued, Roberts noticed how easily they shifted into discussing strategy instead of emotion. "The investors I spoke with today were excited about the engagement," Iris said. "It reinforces confidence. Stability matters." Roberts traced the rim of his glass thoughtfully. "Does it ever feel like we talk about our future the same way we talk about business?" She smiled, amused. "That's because we understand each other. We're practical." "And feelings?" he asked quietly. "They're there," she said, as if the answer was obvious. "Just balanced, balanced." The word lingered between them like a carefully chosen headline. After dinner, they walked along the terrace where soft lights lined the floor. The city stretched beneath them, alive with movement, while the restaurant remained calm and contained. Iris slipped her arm through his. "My parents are planning a dinner next week," she said. "They'd love for you to announce the engagement then." "So soon?" he asked. She glanced up at him. "We've been together long enough. People expect it." He nodded slowly, though the idea felt heavier than he anticipated. A group of guests approached to greet them, offering congratulations that felt premature yet inevitable. Iris handled the attention effortlessly, thanking everyone with poised confidence. Roberts watched her as she spoke, elegant, composed, admired by everyone around her. She fit perfectly into the life he had built. Still, a quiet distance hovered beneath the surface of their interactions. When their hands touched, it felt polite rather than electric. When they laughed, it sounded practiced rather than spontaneous. Later, as they stepped away from the crowd, Iris turned to him. "You seem distracted tonight." "I've just had a lot on my mind," he admitted. "Work?" she asked. "Partly." She studied him carefully. "You know you can tell me anything, right?" He hesitated. There were things he didn't fully understand himself, questions that had begun forming long before he recognized them. "I know," he said finally. "You two complement each other perfectly," an older executive remarked. "Strength meets strategy." A few days later, Roberts joined Iris at a private networking brunch hosted by one of her longtime mentors. The setting felt exclusive without being loud, a rooftop garden with soft music and carefully curated conversations. Guests greeted them like a headline come to life. "Roberts Iris, the power couple," someone said with a grin. Iris handled the attention gracefully, introducing him to investors and industry leaders who spoke about their future as if it were already decided. Roberts smiled politely, though he felt like he was standing inside a narrative written by someone else. During a quieter moment, Iris leaned toward him. "This is what partnership looks like," she said. "Shared goals, shared vision." He nodded, watching her engage with the crowd. She was brilliant, driven, and confident, qualities he genuinely respected. Yet when she spoke about their future, she focused on plans rather than feelings. As the brunch ended, they walked toward the elevator together. "You've been distant lately," Iris said softly. "Not physically, emotionally." He paused, surprised by her directness. "I didn't realize it showed." "It does," she said. "You're still here, but part of you feels somewhere else." He searched for the right words, but found none that felt honest enough. "I'm just tired," he said instead. She gave a small nod, accepting the explanation even if it wasn't complete. "Take care of yourself," she said. "We're building something important together." That evening, Robert sat alone in his office reviewing the final details for the ring appointment. Designs from Arden Vale glowed across his tablet screen. Flawless stones, elegant settings, symbols of commitment that aligned perfectly with the image he and Iris presented to the world. He imagined placing one of those rings on her finger at the upcoming dinner, surrounded by applause and approval. It should have felt exciting. Instead, it felt inevitable. His phone buzzed with a message from Iris. "Can't wait for tomorrow. Everything is falling into place." He stared at the words for a moment before setting the phone down. He thought about the way Iris described their future. Structured, strategic, admired. He thought about how easy it was to talk about achievements together, and how rare it was to talk about vulnerability. Their relationship wasn't cold. It wasn't unhappy. But something about it felt incomplete. Roberts closed his laptop and leaned back in his chair, letting the silence fill the room. Tomorrow, he would walk into a jewelry store and make a decision that would shape the rest of his life. And for the first time, he wondered whether certainty was the same thing as truth. Arden and Vale Fine Jewelry sat on a quiet corner just beyond the rush of downtown traffic, its tall glass windows reflecting the slow rhythm of the afternoon. Inside, the atmosphere felt calm and deliberate. Warm lighting, soft music, and the gentle hum of conversation that never rose above a respectful murmur. Robert stepped through the door with measured confidence, his expression composed, his mind focused on finishing what he started. Today was meant to be simple. Choose the ring, confirm the setting, move forward. A consultant approached almost immediately. "Mr. Campbell, welcome back. We prepared a private viewing area for you." "Thank you," he replied. As he followed her deeper into the showroom, his gaze moved across displays filled with carefully arranged diamonds. Everything felt precise, controlled, exactly how he preferred it. Then a familiar laugh crossed the room. It wasn't loud, it didn't demand attention, yet it carried a warmth that stopped him mid-step. Roberts turned. Behind a nearby counter stood Louisa Akins. For a moment, he forgot why he was there. She looked different in small ways, her hair slightly shorter, her posture steadier, but her calm presence felt unchanged. Time seemed to pause between them as recognition settled in. "Roberts?" she said, her voice gentle. "Louisa," he replied, surprised by how softly his own voice sounded. "I didn't know you worked here." She gave a small smile. "It's been a while." "Yes, it has." The consultant glanced between them, sensing the shift in atmosphere. "Would you prefer Louisa assist you today?" she asked politely. Roberts hesitated only a second. "That would be fine." The consultant nodded and stepped away, leaving them standing across the glass counter, separated by years they hadn't discussed. Louisa's professionalism returned quickly, though a quiet curiosity lingered in her eyes. "How can I help you today?" "I'm here to look at engagement rings," he said. The words felt heavier than he expected. Before she could respond, a small voice spoke from beside her. "Mama, can I use the blue crayon now?" Roberts's attention shifted downward. A little boy sat on a stool near the counter, coloring carefully inside a sketchbook. He looked up with bright curiosity, studying Roberts as if trying to understand who he was. Louisa rested a gentle hand on the child's shoulder. "Of course, Torres." "Mama." The word echoed quietly in Roberts's mind. Torres waved shyly. I, Roberts replied, offering a small smile. "That's a great drawing. It's a rocket," the boy said proudly. Louisa moved smoothly into her role as a consultant, opening a velvet tray filled with rings. "You mentioned an engagement ring. Do you have something specific in mind?" Roberts leaned closer to the display, though his attention kept drifting back to her, to the calm way she spoke, the patience in her movements. "I want something timeless," he said. "Elegant, but not too loud." She nodded thoughtfully, selecting a few pieces that matched his description. As she explained the details, the cut, the clarity, the craftsmanship, her voice carried the same quiet confidence he remembered from years ago. Yet beneath the professionalism, an unspoken history lingered. "You look well," he said after a moment. "So do you," she replied. "Your company's been everywhere lately. It keeps me busy." "Busy can be good," she said gently, placing another ring on the tray. "As long as it doesn't take everything from you." He gave a faint smile. "Still honest? Always." Torres slid his coloring book closer to the edge of the counter, holding up a page filled with bright lines. "Do you like it?" he asked Roberts. "It's impressive," Roberts said. "Where's the rocket going?" "Anywhere," Torres answered. "Mama says you can go anywhere if you try." The word struck Roberts with unexpected familiarity. He glanced at Louisa, and for a brief second their eyes met, a shared memory passing silently between them. She looked away first, returning her focus to the rings. "Tell me about the woman you're proposing to," she said. Roberts picked up a diamond ring, watching the light move across its surface. "Her name is Iris," he began. "She's accomplished, confident." Louisa waited, her expression calm. "She knows exactly what she wants," he added. "And how do you feel when you're with her?" she asked. He hesitated, searching for an answer that felt complete. "She's impressive," he said finally. Louisa didn't press further, but the pause between them felt heavier than before. Torres shifted on his stool, dropping a crayon that rolled toward Roberts's feet. He bent to pick it up, crouching slightly so he was level with the boy. "Careful," Roberts said with a small grin, handing it back. "Rockets need steady hands." Torres giggled, and the sound softened something inside Roberts he hadn't realized was tense. When he stood again, Louisa was watching quietly. "You seem different," she said. "So do you," he replied. "Different can be good," she said, echoing his earlier words. He nodded slowly. The conversation drifted back to the rings, but Roberts found it difficult to focus. Each diamond looked perfect, yet none of them stirred any real excitement. "What's his name?" he asked again, glancing toward Torres. "Torres," she repeated. "He's yours?" Roberts asked carefully. Louisa paused for a fraction of a second before answering. "Yes." There was no explanation beyond that, just a calm boundary she placed without tension. He respected it, even though questions formed quietly in his mind. Another consultant walked past carrying a tray, the soft clink of glass breaking the silence. Around them, other customers moved through the showroom, unaware of the history unfolding at this counter. Roberts set one of the rings back onto the velvet. "They're all beautiful," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. Louisa noticed. "You don't sound sure." "I thought I was," he admitted. She studied him carefully. "Big decisions deserve honesty." He let out a quiet breath, glancing once more at Torres, who was now building a small tower from crayons. "What happened to us?" Roberts asked softly. Louisa's expression softened, but she didn't look away. "You chose your path. I chose mine. That sounds simple." "It wasn't," she said gently, "but it was real." The words lingered between them, heavy with meaning yet free from blame. A moment later, another client approached the counter, and Louisa excused herself to assist briefly. Roberts stepped aside, giving her space, watching the way she interacted with people, calm, attentive, fully present. When she returned, he realized he hadn't made a decision. "I think I need more time," he said. "That's okay," she replied. "Rushing rarely helps." He nodded, slipping his hands into his pockets. Torres ran up to him, holding out the rocket drawing. "You can have it," the boy said. Roberts accepted it, surprised by the gesture. "Thank you." As he walked toward the exit, the soft music followed him, blending with the quiet conversations behind him. He paused at the door and glanced back once more. Louisa stood behind the counter, her posture calm, her expression unreadable. Outside, the city air felt cooler than before. Roberts unfolded the drawing, studying the simple lines and bright colors. He came to buy a ring. Instead, he left carrying questions he wasn't ready to answer, and the feeling that something important had shifted the moment he heard a familiar laugh across the room. Roberts didn't go far after stepping outside Arden and Vale Fine Jewelry. He stood across the street for a while, watching people pass by. Couples laughing over shared jokes, a young woman balancing coffee cups while speaking into her phone, a man kneeling to tie his child's shoelace. Everyday moments unfolded naturally around him, untouched by the careful structure he was used to. The rocket drawing Torres gave him rested, folded in his hand. He told himself he should leave, head back to the office, finish the day as planned. Instead, after a long breath, he turned and walked back toward the store. The bell above the door chimed softly as he entered again. Louisa looked up first, surprise flickering briefly across her face before professionalism returned. "Did you forget something?" she asked. "Maybe," he replied, offering a small smile. "Or maybe I just wasn't ready to go yet." She nodded, gesturing toward the same counter. "We can keep looking if you'd like." Torres waved enthusiastically when he saw him return. "You came back." "I guess I did," Roberts said, crouching slightly. "Did your rocket reach space yet?" "Almost," Torres said seriously. "It needs more blue." Louisa watched them quietly for a moment before sliding another tray of rings onto the counter. The diamonds caught the warm light, scattering reflections across the glass surface. "These are a bit more understated," she said. "Elegant, but not overwhelming." Roberts leaned closer, studying them carefully this time. "You always knew how to read people," he said. She gave a faint smile. "It helps in this job." Louisa tilted her head slightly. "And you?" "I don't know," he admitted. She didn't rush to fill the silence. Instead, she waited, giving him space to consider his own thoughts. "What do you see when you look at these?" he asked. "I see stories," she replied. "Some people want something that announces itself. Others want something quieter, something that feels personal." Her words settled into him slowly. Torres shifted on his stool, holding up a new drawing. "Look, it's a launch button." He set the ring back down, turning it slightly so the light moved across its surface. "Tell me something honestly," he said. "Do I look like someone about to make a good decision?" Roberts smiled. "That's important. Every rocket needs a moment when it decides to go." Louisa glanced at him, a subtle understanding passing between them. "And not every launch happens when you expect," she said gently. She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "You look like someone trying to do what's expected of him." He picked up a ring with a simple oval diamond. "Iris would probably choose something bold," he said. "Something that stands out immediately." "And that's different?" he asked. "Sometimes," she said softly. He let out a quiet breath. "Iris is incredible. Everyone admires her. We make sense together." "But," Louisa prompted gently, "but when you asked how she makes me feel, I didn't know what to say." Louisa's expression remained calm, free of judgment. "That doesn't mean the answer doesn't exist," she said. "It just means you haven't found it yet." Torres dropped a crayon again, and Roberts bent down to pick it up. The boy leaned closer, whispering as if sharing a secret. "Mama says people should only choose things that make them happy." Roberts glanced up at Louisa, surprised. She shrugged slightly. "He listens more than I realize. I used to say something similar to you," she added quietly. "I remember," Roberts replied. For a moment, the noise of the store faded into the background. All he could hear was the scratch of crayons and the steady rhythm of Louisa's voice as she explained another ring. "What made you choose this place?" he asked. "It felt calm," she said. "After everything changed, I wanted something steady." Her words carried more meaning than she explained. Roberts picked up another ring, a flawless diamond surrounded by smaller stones. It sparkled brightly, demanding attention. "This one feels loud," he said. "It's designed to be," Louisa replied. "Some people love that." He placed it back carefully. "I used to think louder meant better. And now?" she asked. He hesitated, watching Torres concentrate on coloring. "Now I'm not sure." A couple nearby laughed as a consultant presented them with a ring, applause breaking out when the woman slipped it onto her finger. The joyful noise filled the room for a moment before settling again into quiet conversation. Roberts leaned against the counter slightly, his voice softer. "Do you ever look at people and wonder if they're choosing what they truly want, or just what fits their life?" Louisa met his gaze. "All the time. And what do you tell them?" "I tell them to slow down long enough to listen to themselves." Her answer felt simple, but it landed with unexpected weight. He glanced at Torres again. "You've built something peaceful here," he said. "I try," she replied. He hesitated, then asked carefully, "Are you happy?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she watched her son for a moment before saying, "I'm at peace." The distinction lingered between them. Roberts ran a hand through his hair, looking down at the rings one more time. None of them felt wrong, but none felt certain either. "I should probably make a decision today," he said quietly. "You should make a decision, when it feels honest," Louisa replied. Torres tugged gently on Roberts' sleeve. "You forgot your rocket," he said, handing back the drawing he had been coloring earlier. Robert smiled, folding the paper carefully. "Thank you." He straightened, meeting Louisa's eyes. "I think I need to think," he admitted. "That's okay," she said. "The right choices don't disappear just because you take your time." He nodded, stepping back from the counter. The weight he carried when he first walked in felt different now, less certain but more real. As he reached the door, Louisa's voice stopped him. "Roberts." He turned. "Whatever you decide," she said gently, "make sure it belongs to you, not to anyone else's expectations." He held her gaze for a moment, then gave a small, grateful nod. Outside, the late afternoon light stretched across the street. Roberts unfolded the rocket drawing again, tracing the bright lines with his eyes. The diamonds he came to choose were still waiting inside. But for the first time, he wondered if the most important decision he faced had nothing to do with a ring at all. The next morning began like every other, structured, efficient, and precise. Roberts stood near the window of his office at Campbell Dynamics, watching the city move below while an assistant summarized the day's schedule. Meetings lined up one after another, each one promising progress, expansion, and applause from people who believed he had everything figured out. "Your acquisition proposal was approved," she said. "The board wants to celebrate tonight. Send them my thanks," Roberts replied, though his voice carried less excitement than usual. She hesitated, studying him briefly. "You seem tired." "I'm fine," he said automatically. When she left, the office fell quiet except for the low hum of the building. Roberts sat at his desk, opening a presentation filled with numbers that once energized him. Today they felt distant, like someone else's achievement. He reached into his jacket pocket without thinking and pulled out Torres's rocket drawing. Bright colors, uneven lines, a small message written in careful letters at the bottom, "Anywhere you want." Roberts stared at it longer than he expected before folding it again and placing it beside his laptop. A knock on the glass door interrupted his thoughts. Two senior executives entered, smiling broadly. "Congratulations," one said. "This deal puts us ahead of every competitor." "It's impressive," the other added. "You've built something extraordinary." Roberts thanked them politely, discussing strategy and timelines with his usual clarity. The conversation flowed easily. Projections, expansion plans, long-term influence. Yet when they left, the room felt heavier instead of lighter. He leaned back in his chair, eyes drifting toward the skyline. The success everyone praised had always felt like momentum, forward motion that gave his life direction. Now it felt like noise. Later that afternoon, he joined a video conference with international partners, screens filled with faces, voices overlapping as they discussed logistics and future opportunities. He smiled politely. "It's a team effort." The meeting ended with applause echoing faintly through his speakers. When the screen went dark, silence returned quickly. Roberts rubbed his temples, realizing how tired he felt despite accomplishing everything he set out to achieve. His phone buzzed with a message from Iris. "Dinner tonight? We should talk about the announcement." He stared at the text for a moment before replying. "I might be late. Big day at the office." She responded almost instantly. "That's okay. I know how much this matters to you." He set the phone down slowly. Did it still matter the same way? The evening celebration took place in a private lounge reserved for executives. Soft music played in the background while colleagues congratulated him, raising glasses to another milestone. To Roberts, someone said, "Proof that ambition always wins." Laughter followed, warm and approving. Roberts thanked them, delivering a brief speech about teamwork and vision. The words came naturally. He had given versions of this speech countless times. People nodded, inspired by his confidence. Yet as the applause faded, he found himself scanning the room without knowing why. Everyone here admired him. No one truly knew him. "I know," Roberts replied. "Then why do you look like you're somewhere else?" the man asked with a half-smile. Roberts hesitated before answering. "Just thinking about the future." The partner laughed lightly. "The future looks perfect from here. Perfect." The word lingered in Roberts's mind as he stepped away from the crowd. Outside, the air felt cooler, quieter. The noise of the celebration faded behind him as he leaned against the railing overlooking the street below. He pulled out the rocket drawing again, tracing the lines absently. "Anywhere you want." The phrase felt simple, yet it stirred something deeper, a reminder of a time when decisions were driven by curiosity rather than expectation. He thought about Louisa's calm voice, the way she spoke without trying to impress anyone. He thought about Torres's easy smile, untouched by ambition or pressure. His phone rang. "Iris," he answered. "Are you still coming?" she asked. Her tone remained composed, but there was a hint of curiosity beneath it. "I'm at a work event," he said. "It ran longer than expected." "That's all right," she replied. "We can talk tomorrow. I just wanted to go over the engagement dinner plans." He hesitated, glancing at the city lights. "Sure. You sound distant," she said gently. "I'm just tired," he answered. "Well, rest when you can," she said. "Big moments deserve your best energy." After the call ended, Robert stayed outside a little longer. The celebration behind him continued. Laughter, music, praise. Yet none of it reached him the way it used to. Success had always been loud, visible, undeniable. Tonight, it felt strangely quiet. When he finally returned home, the penthouse greeted him with perfect stillness. The lights turned on automatically as he stepped inside, illuminating polished surfaces and carefully chosen art pieces. He loosened his tie, placing the rocket drawing on the kitchen counter. The room felt immaculate and empty. Roberts poured himself a glass of water, standing by the window while the city stretched endlessly before him. For years he believed every achievement would bring clarity, that reaching the next milestone would make everything feel complete. Instead, a quiet question followed him into the silence. What if success wasn't the same as fulfillment? He didn't have an answer. All he knew was that the certainty he carried into Arden and Vale fine jewelry had begun to fade, replaced by something unfamiliar, doubt mixed with curiosity. And as he stood there watching the city lights flicker below, he realized that for the first time in years, he wasn't rushing toward the next victory. He was waiting, trying to understand why the life he built suddenly felt less certain than a child's simple drawing folded neatly on his counter. 2 days passed before Roberts returned to Arden and Vale fine jewelry. He told himself the visit was practical. He still hadn't chosen a ring, and the proposal dinner was approaching quickly. Yet as he stepped out of the car and approached the entrance, he knew the real reason had nothing to do with diamonds. Inside, the store felt calm in a way his office never did. Soft music drifted through the air while consultants moved quietly between displays. When Louisa noticed him near the doorway, her expression shifted from surprise to something softer, more cautious. "You're back," she said. "I guess I am," he replied. Torres looked up from his coloring book and immediately smiled. "Rocket Man," he said, waving excitedly. Roberts laughed quietly. "That's a new title." Louisa shook her head with a faint smile. "He remembers everyone who listens to his stories." Roberts walked closer to the counter, noticing how different the space felt compared to his world, slower, more grounded. "I didn't come to look at rings today," he said after a moment. Louisa raised an eyebrow slightly. "Then what did you come for?" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "I think I came because something felt unfinished the last time I left." Her expression grew thoughtful. "Unfinished conversations can be heavy," she said. Torres tugged gently at Roberts's sleeve. "Do you want to see my new drawing?" "Of course," Roberts replied, crouching down beside him. The boy held up a page filled with stars and another rocket, this one larger than before. "This one goes farther," he explained proudly. "That's impressive," Roberts said. "Looks like it learned from the first one." Torres grinned and returned to coloring, giving the adults a little more space. Louisa rested her hands lightly on the counter. "You seem different today," she said. "Less certain." "I thought certainty was my strength," Roberts admitted. "Now I'm not so sure." She studied him quietly. "What changed?" He glanced around the store, making sure no one else was close enough to overhear. "When I left here last time, I went straight back into meetings. Everyone congratulated me, talked about the future, told me how perfect everything looked. He paused, but none of it felt real. Louisa listened without interrupting. I keep thinking about what you said, he continued, about slowing down long enough to listen to myself. And what did you hear? She asked gently. He exhaled slowly. Questions. Torres hummed softly while coloring, filling the space with a comforting rhythm. Roberts leaned lightly against the counter. Can I ask you something honestly? You always could, she replied. When you said you were at peace, what does that feel like? Louisa considered the question carefully. It's not about having everything figured out, she said. It's about waking up without feeling like you're chasing something that doesn't belong to you. Her words settled quietly between them. He nodded slowly. I don't think I've felt that in a long time. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she reached for a small cloth, absent-mindedly polishing the glass surface, a habit that seemed to help her think. Why come back now? She asked finally. Roberts glanced at Torres again before meeting her eyes. Because being here felt honest, and I needed to understand why. The honesty in his voice softened her posture slightly, though a hint of caution remained. Torres slid off his stool and walked over, holding a crayon toward Roberts. Can you help me color the moon? He asked. Roberts accepted the crayon without hesitation, kneeling beside him. For a few quiet minutes, he colored carefully inside the lines while Torres explained every detail of his imaginary rocket. Louisa watched them silently, her expression thoughtful. You're good with him, she said when Roberts stood again. I just listen, he replied. That's more than most people do, she said softly. A brief silence followed, not uncomfortable, just full of unspoken history. Roberts finally spoke again. The truth is, I don't know if I'm making the right choice with Iris. Louisa's eyes softened, but she kept her voice neutral. That's something only you can decide. I know, he said. I just didn't expect to feel this uncertain. She nodded slowly. Sometimes life brings you back to places you thought you would move past, not to confuse you, but to help you understand yourself better. He smiled faintly. You always had a way of saying things simply. Simple doesn't mean easy, she replied. Torres tugged at Louisa's hand. Mama, can we show him the big rocket? He asked. Louisa hesitated briefly, then nodded. She guided Roberts toward a small display near the back of the store where a decorative sculpture of a rocket stood among several themed jewelry pieces. He insisted we visit this section every day, she explained. It's his favorite. Torres ran ahead, pointing excitedly. That's where rockets start, he said. Roberts watched him, noticing how comfortable the boy seemed around him, how natural the moment felt. Do you ever wonder what life would have been like if things turned out differently? He asked Louisa quietly. She paused, considering the question. Sometimes, she admitted. But I try not to live in what-ifs, and now? He asked. She met his gaze, steady and calm. Now I focus on what's real. The words carried weight, though she didn't explain further. A consultant passed by, greeting Roberts politely before continuing on. The store's calm rhythm continued around them, unchanged by the quiet tension unfolding between the three of them. After a while, Roberts stepped back toward the counter. I didn't expect to feel this comfortable here, he said. Louisa smiled slightly. You used to slow down when we talked. Maybe that part of you never left. He looked at her carefully. And you? Are you comfortable with me coming back like this? She hesitated before answering. I'm cautious, but I believe people can grow. Her honesty made him nod in understanding. Torres climbed back onto his stool, drawing stars around his rocket. You should come again tomorrow, he said without looking up. Roberts laughed quietly. You're very convincing. Louisa glanced at her son, then back at Roberts. He likes routines, she explained. Maybe I do too, Roberts said softly. He checked his watch reluctantly. I should get back to work. Torres handed him another small drawing. For later, he said. Roberts accepted it carefully. Thank you. As he turned toward the door, Louisa's voice stopped him. Roberts. He looked back. Whatever answers you're searching for, she said gently. Don't rush them just because someone else expects you to. He held her gaze for a moment before nodding. I won't. Outside, the city moved as quickly as ever. Cars rushing past, people crossing streets with purpose. But as Roberts walked toward his car, the weight on his shoulders felt different. He hadn't come back for a ring. He came back looking for truth. And for the first time in years, he felt like he was getting closer to it, not through grand decisions, but through quiet conversations that reminded him who he used to be. The third time Roberts returned to Arden and Vale Fine Jewelry, he didn't pause outside the entrance. He walked in with quiet determination, as if the decision to come back had already settled somewhere deeper than logic. The soft music inside felt familiar now, almost grounding. He spotted Torres first, sitting at the counter, carefully lining up crayons in a straight row like tiny rockets preparing for launch. "Hey," Roberts said gently. Torres looked up and smiled. "You came back again. I guess I like this place," Roberts replied. Louisa turned from assisting another client, her expression shifting the moment she saw him. She finished her conversation calmly before approaching, folding her hands lightly together. "You didn't call," she said. "I wasn't sure what I'd say," he admitted. She studied him for a moment, sensing the seriousness behind his calm voice. "Do you want to sit?" she asked, gesturing toward a quieter corner near the back of the store. He nodded. Torres followed them halfway before Louisa knelt beside him. "Give us a few minutes, sweetheart," she said softly. "You can keep drawing here." The boy nodded, completely trusting. Roberts noticed that trust, the way Torres didn't question her, the way he felt safe enough to stay where he was. They moved to a small seating area surrounded by glass displays. The light reflected softly across the polished surfaces, giving the space an intimate stillness. Roberts exhaled slowly. "I've been thinking non-stop since the last time we talked." Louisa waited, letting him find his words without interruption. "There's something I need to ask," he said quietly, "and I need you to be honest with me." Her expression grew more serious. "I've never been anything else with you." He hesitated, glancing briefly toward Torres before returning his gaze to her. "That little boy, Torres," his voice softened. "Is he mine?" The question didn't break the air loudly. It settled into the space between them, heavy yet calm. Louisa didn't answer immediately. She looked down at her hands, then back at him, as if measuring how much truth the moment could hold. "Yes," she said finally. The word landed gently, without drama, yet it changed everything. Roberts didn't react with shock the way he imagined he might have. Instead, a deep stillness moved through him, like a puzzle piece sliding into place after years of uncertainty. "He's my son?" he asked, more to understand the reality than to challenge it. She nodded once. "He is." Silence followed, not empty, just full of memories neither of them spoke aloud. Roberts leaned back slightly, processing the truth. Images flashed through his mind, the years he spent building his company, the nights he convinced himself he made the right choices, the quiet feeling that something important had been missing. "How long?" he asked. 3 years, she replied softly. He ran a hand over his face, letting out a slow breath. "Why didn't you tell me?" Louisa's voice stayed steady. "Because when we parted ways, you were chasing something that meant everything to you. I didn't want to pull you back with responsibility you weren't ready to carry." "I would have tried," he said quietly. She gave a small, sad smile. "You would have. But trying and being ready are different things." Her honesty didn't feel like blame. It felt like truth spoken without anger. Roberts glanced toward Torres again. The boy was laughing softly to himself, adding stars around a bright rocket drawing. "I missed everything," Roberts whispered. "You missed moments," she corrected gently, "not the chance to show up now." Her words settled into him with unexpected comfort. He leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on his knees. "Does he know about me?" "Not yet," she said. "He knows you're someone kind, someone who listens." Roberts nodded slowly. "I want to be part of his life." Louisa's eyes softened, though caution remained. "That's a big promise." "I know," he said, "and I don't expect you to trust it immediately. I need the chance to try." She studied him carefully, searching his expression for certainty rather than impulse. "People change," she said quietly, "but real change takes time." "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he replied, "just honesty and a chance to build something real from here." Her gaze lingered on him for a long moment, before she nodded slightly. "We'll take it one step at a time." Torres suddenly looked up and waved at them. "Mama, look, the rocket landed." Louisa smiled at her son, then glanced back at Roberts. "He thinks every ending is a new beginning," she said softly. Roberts stood, walking over to the counter. Torres held up the drawing proudly. "It made it all the way," the boy said. "That's impressive," Roberts replied. "What happens after it lands?" Torres thought for a moment. "It builds a home." The simplicity of the answer caught Roberts off guard. He crouched beside the boy, studying the drawing more closely. "You're very creative," he said. Torres beamed. "Mama says dreams need patience." Roberts looked up at Louisa, understanding passing silently between them. A consultant approached briefly to ask Louisa a question about another client. She answered quickly before returning her attention to Roberts. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. "I don't know yet," he admitted, "but I feel clearer." She nodded. He stood slowly, glancing around the store, the place that had shifted from a simple errand into something far more meaningful. "I keep thinking about all the time I spent chasing the next milestone," he said, and now I realize I missed the most important one without even knowing it existed. Louisa stepped closer, her voice soft. You didn't know, and you can't change the past, but I can change what happens next, he said. Her eyes searched his face, measuring the sincerity behind his words. Then start by showing up, she said gently. He nodded. For a few minutes they stood quietly together while Torres continued drawing, the store's soft music filling the space between them. Finally, Roberts reached into his pocket and unfolded the original rocket drawing Torres had given him days earlier. I kept this, he said. Torres's eyes widened. You didn't lose it? No, Roberts replied. Some things are too important to lose. Louisa watched the exchange, emotion flickering softly across her face. As Roberts prepared to leave, he paused at the doorway, turning back toward them. I'm not ready to make any big announcements, he said, but I want you to know I'm here now. Louisa gave a small nod. Not full trust yet, but not distance either. We'll see where that leads, she said. Outside, the city moved just as it always had, unaware of the quiet turning point that had taken place inside the jewelry store. Roberts walked slowly toward his car, the weight of the truth settling into him. Not as a burden, but as a beginning he never expected. For the first time since building his company, he wasn't thinking about the next deal or the next headline. He was thinking about a small boy drawing rockets, and the chance to become a father he never knew he was meant to be. The first time Roberts met Torres outside Arden and Vale Fine Jewelry, the city felt different. Not quieter, just slower. Louisa had suggested a small park a few blocks from the store, a place where Torres liked to watch pigeons gather near the fountain and pretend they were tiny spacecraft preparing for takeoff. Roberts arrived early, unsure what to expect, hands resting loosely in his pockets as he watched families move through the afternoon light. He noticed Louisa and Torres before they noticed him. Torres ran ahead, laughing as he chased a paper airplane someone had tossed into the air. Louisa followed at an easy pace, her expression calm, observant, the same steadiness Roberts remembered from years ago. Hi, Torres said when he reached him, slightly out of breath. You came. I said I would, Roberts replied, crouching down to meet his eyes. Louisa stopped a few steps away. Thank you for coming, she said. We'll keep things simple today. I'm good with simple, he answered. They walked toward a bench near the fountain. Torres immediately began telling Roberts about a rocket he wanted to build someday, explaining every detail with excitement that felt effortless. Roberts listened, not because he was trying to impress anyone, but because he genuinely wanted to understand. You really like rockets, he said. They go far, Torres replied seriously. Mama says you can go anywhere if you try. Louisa gave a small smile, though her eyes stayed thoughtful as she watched them interact. For a while, Roberts forgot about meetings, deadlines, and expectations. He helped Torres fold paper airplanes, laughing quietly when one flew crookedly into a nearby bush. You're not very good at this, Torres teased. Louisa sat on the bench, observing without interrupting. She noticed the way Roberts lowered himself to Torres's level instead of towering over him, the way he listened carefully, never rushing the boy's thoughts. After some time, Torres wandered toward the fountain to watch the pigeons again, leaving the adults a moment alone. You didn't have to do this, Louisa said softly. I wanted to, Roberts replied. It feels important. She studied him, searching for signs of hesitation or obligation. Instead, she saw a quiet focus she hadn't expected. He's cautious with new people, she said. The fact that he's comfortable already means something. Roberts glanced toward Torres. He's easy to be around. He makes things simple, she agreed. A brief silence settled between them, not heavy, just thoughtful. I'm still figuring out what this looks like, Roberts admitted. I don't want to rush into a role I don't fully understand. That's wise, Louisa said. Presence matters more than promises. He nodded slowly. Torres ran back toward them, holding a feather he had found near the fountain. Look, he said. It's from a rocket bird. Roberts laughed softly. That sounds like a new species. They spent the next hour walking through the park, Torres narrating imaginary missions while Roberts asked questions that showed genuine curiosity. Louisa watched quietly, her guard lowering a little more with every easy moment. At one point, Torres grabbed both of their hands, pulling them toward a small bridge overlooking the water. Stand here, he said. This is the best place to watch launches. Roberts exchanged a brief glance with Louisa, a silent acknowledgement of how natural the moment felt despite everything that had changed. When Torres wandered ahead again, Louisa spoke quietly. You don't look like someone forcing himself to be here. I'm not, Roberts said. I thought I'd feel awkward, but I don't. She nodded. That's a good sign. He hesitated before adding, I keep thinking about how much I missed. You can't measure time by regret, she said gently. Only by what you choose to do now. Her words didn't feel like comfort. They felt like direction. As the sun began to lower, Torres grew tired and climbed onto a bench, leaning against Louisa's shoulder. Roberts sat beside them, watching the city move beyond the trees. For once, he wasn't checking his phone or thinking about the next task waiting for him. You're quiet, Louisa said. I'm just here, he replied. She smiled faintly. That's new for you. It is, he admitted. Torres handed him a folded piece of paper before yawning. Another rocket, he said. Roberts accepted it carefully. Thank you. The simplicity of the moment felt grounding in a way nothing in his professional life ever had. Eventually, they walked back toward the street. Torres held Roberts's hand without hesitation, talking about a future mission that involved traveling to the moon and building a giant playground. Louisa walked beside them, her expression softer than before. When they reached her car, Torres climbed into the back seat, already half asleep. Roberts lingered by the door. Thank you for trusting me with today, he said. I'm not giving trust all at once, she replied honestly. But I can see you're trying. That's all I can promise right now, he said. She nodded. Trying is a good place to start. He stepped back as she closed the car door. Torres waved sleepily through the window, and Roberts returned the gesture with a small smile. As Louisa drove away, Roberts stood on the sidewalk for a moment, feeling something unfamiliar settle inside him. He wasn't chasing anything. He wasn't proving anything. For the first time in years, he was simply present, and the quiet peace that came with it felt more meaningful than any victory he had celebrated in a boardroom. The restaurant Iris chose for dinner sat high above the city, its floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting the glow of evening lights. Everything about the space felt refined. Quiet conversations, soft music, polished service that anticipated every request before it was spoken. Roberts arrived a few minutes late. Iris was already seated, reviewing something on her tablet. She looked up as he approached, offering a warm smile that carried a hint of curiosity beneath it. You're later than usual, she said, closing the screen. Traffic, he replied, sliding into the chair across from her. She studied him for a moment longer than expected. You've been hard to reach lately. I've had a lot going on, he said carefully. The server poured water, and for a while their conversation moved easily. Updates about work, upcoming events, mutual acquaintances. From the outside, nothing seemed different. They looked composed, successful, aligned. Yet Iris noticed the subtle pauses in Robert's responses, the way his attention drifted toward the skyline rather than staying fully in the conversation. You're somewhere else tonight, she said finally. He met her gaze. I'm here. Physically, yes, she replied with a small smile. But emotionally, I'm not sure. Roberts didn't answer right away. She leaned back slightly, watching him with thoughtful calm rather than frustration. Did something happen? She asked. He hesitated. I've just been rethinking a few things. About us? She asked directly. He took a breath. About everything. The honesty surprised even him. Iris nodded slowly, absorbing his words without reacting defensively. That explains the distance, she said. The server arrived with their meals, placing plates carefully on the table. For a moment the conversation paused, giving both of them space to think. You've always been decisive, Iris continued once they were alone again, so when you start questioning things, it stands out. I know, he said quietly. She watched him pick at his food without much appetite. Is this about the engagement? She asked. It's part of it, he admitted. She rested her hands together on the table, her posture calm but attentive. Roberts, I don't need perfection, she said. But I do need honesty. He nodded. You deserve that. Silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, just heavy with things neither of them had fully said yet. You used to talk about the future like it was already written, Iris said. Lately, you sound uncertain. I think I've been moving too fast, he replied. Making decisions because they made sense, not because I truly felt them. She studied him closely, searching for something beneath his words. Did someone change your mind? She asked gently. The question lingered in the air. Roberts chose his answer carefully. Someone reminded me to slow down. Iris didn't ask for details. Instead, she nodded as if she already understood more than he expected. That's not a bad thing, she said. Growth isn't always comfortable. He looked at her, surprised by the calm acceptance in her voice. I know people think we're perfect together, she continued, but perfection isn't the same as connection. Her words caught him off guard. You feel it too? He asked. She gave a small, thoughtful smile. I've always known our relationship was built on shared ambition. I just believed that was enough. And now? He asked quietly. She glanced toward the window, watching the lights flicker across the water below. Now I'm not sure either of us feels completely seen. The honesty between them felt refreshing, even if it carried a quiet sadness. Roberts leaned forward slightly. I don't want to hurt you. I know, she said softly. And I don't want you to pretend, just to protect me. Her composure remained steady, but her eyes revealed a depth of understanding that surprised him. They ate in silence for a few moments before she spoke again. You look different when you talk about whatever has been on your mind lately, she said. More alive. He didn't know how to respond to that. She reached across the table, resting her hand lightly over his. I care about you, she said, which is why I won't ignore what's changing. Roberts felt a mix of gratitude and heaviness. I need time to figure things out, he admitted. You have it, she replied. Just don't disappear emotionally while you're doing it. He nodded, appreciating her grace. As the dinner ended, they walked together toward the elevator. The city stretched endlessly below them, lights reflecting against the glass walls. Iris paused before stepping inside. Whatever you're discovering, she said gently, make sure it's something that truly belongs to you, not just something you think you should want. Her words echoed Louisa's in a different way, carrying the same quiet truth. The elevator doors closed, and for a moment they stood side by side in silence. Roberts realized that Iris wasn't angry or distant. She was simply aware, and awareness, he knew, often came before change. Roberts was halfway through a strategy meeting when his phone vibrated quietly against the table. He almost ignored it. Almost. The name on the screen made him pause. Louisa. He excused himself with a brief nod and stepped into the hallway before answering. Hey, he said softly. Her voice on the other end sounded steady, but underneath it carried a tension he hadn't heard before. Roberts, Torres is sick. We're at Harborview Children's Clinic. His chest tightened instantly. What happened? He had a sudden fever this morning, she replied. They're running tests. I didn't know who else to call. You did the right thing, he said without hesitation. I'm on my way. He ended the call before she could respond, already moving toward the elevator. The meeting, the presentation, the carefully planned schedule, all of it faded into the background. For the first time in years, Roberts left work without explaining himself. The clinic sat near the waterfront, quieter than the busy medical centers he was used to seeing. Inside, soft colors covered the walls, and a small play area stood near the waiting room. Parents sat close to their children, speaking in hushed voices. Roberts spotted Louisa immediately. She sat in a chair near the hallway entrance, hands clasped tightly together, eyes fixed on the door where nurses moved in and out. When she saw him, relief crossed her face so quickly it made him slow his steps. You came fast, she said. Of course I did, he replied gently. She stood, and for a brief moment they just looked at each other, not as former partners or strangers, but as two people sharing the same fear. Where is he? Roberts asked. In a room down the hall, she said. They're checking his breathing and running tests. The doctor said it might just be a strong infection, but waiting is hard. He nodded, understanding more than he could put into words. They sat side by side in the waiting area. The room felt quieter than any boardroom he had ever entered, the kind of silence filled with hope and worry at the same time. Louisa rubbed her hands together slowly. I didn't want to panic, she said, but when he started coughing, I couldn't stop thinking about worst-case scenarios. Roberts leaned forward slightly. You don't have to carry that alone, he said. She glanced at him, emotion flickering across her eyes before she looked away again. A nurse passed by, offering them a reassuring smile before disappearing into another room. The minutes stretched longer than usual, each second carrying more weight than an entire workday. I keep thinking about how strong he tries to be, Louisa said quietly, even when he's scared. Roberts swallowed, picturing Torres's bright smile and endless imagination. He gets that from you, he said. She shook her head slightly. He's stronger than both of us. Silence settled again. For the first time, Roberts didn't reach for his phone. He didn't check emails or messages. The outside world faded completely, leaving only the present moment. After a while, the door down the hall opened, and a doctor approached with calm, reassuring steps. Louisa? She asked gently. Louisa stood immediately. Yes, how is he? He's stable, the doctor said with a small smile. It looks like a severe respiratory infection, but we caught it early. He'll need medication and rest, but he's going to be okay. Relief moved through Louisa so quickly she had to sit back down. Roberts felt his shoulders loosen for the first time since arriving. Can we see him? Louisa asked. Of course, the doctor replied. Torres sat on the bed, wrapped in a soft blanket, his hair slightly messy from the tests. When he saw them walk in, his face brightened despite the exhaustion in his eyes. You came, he said to Roberts. I told you I would, Roberts replied, stepping closer. Louisa sat beside Torres, brushing her hand gently across his forehead. How do you feel, sweetheart? Like a rocket that ran out of fuel, he said quietly. Roberts chuckled softly. Even rockets need time to recharge. Torres smiled faintly at that. The room felt small but warm, filled with the quiet beeping of monitors and the steady presence of people who cared about him. Roberts stood near the foot of the bed, unsure where to place himself at first, until Torres reached out his hand. Stay, the boy said. Roberts moved closer without hesitation. They talked quietly while the nurse adjusted a few things around the room. Torres explained how brave he had been during the tests, describing each moment like a mission report. You did amazing, Roberts said. That takes courage. Torres nodded proudly before his eyes began to close, exhaustion pulling him into sleep. Louisa watched him carefully, her hand resting protectively on his shoulder. When she finally looked up at Roberts, gratitude filled her expression. Thank you for being here, she whispered. There was nowhere else I wanted to be, he replied. She exhaled slowly, and without thinking too much about it, Roberts reached out and wrapped his arms around her. The embrace felt natural, not dramatic, just steady. Louisa leaned into him, allowing herself a moment of rest after hours of worry. For a long time, neither of them spoke. When they stepped back, she gave a small smile. You're different, she said softly. I feel different, he admitted. They moved back to the waiting area while Torres slept, speaking in low voices about the next steps, medication schedules, follow-up visits, small practical details that made everything feel more manageable. You dropped everything to come here, she said at one point. It wasn't even a decision, he replied. I just knew where I needed to be. Her eyes softened at his words. As evening approached, the clinic grew quieter. Sunlight faded through the windows, replaced by soft indoor lights that gave the space a calm glow. Roberts leaned back in his chair, exhaustion finally catching up with him. Yet beneath it, a deep sense of clarity settled in, the kind that didn't come from success or achievement, but from simply being present when it mattered most. Louisa watched him quietly. You stayed, she said. I'm not leaving, he replied gently, and for the first time since they reunited, she didn't look cautious. She looked hopeful. The morning after Torres was discharged felt softer than usual. Sunlight filtered through the curtains of Louisa's small apartment, landing gently across the living room where toys, sketchbooks, and neatly stacked storybooks filled the shelves. The space felt lived in, warm, simple, and real. Robert stood near the kitchen counter, holding 2 mugs of tea, while Louisa adjusted the blanket around Torres on the couch. The boy was awake but still tired, his voice quieter than usual as he explained the newest rocket design he planned to draw once he felt stronger. You need rest first, Louisa reminded him gently. I can draw slowly, Torres argued. Robert smiled. Even astronauts take recovery days, Torres seemed to consider seriously before nodding. Okay, just one small rocket later, Louisa gave Roberts a grateful look, a silent thank you for helping keep the moment light. They moved into the kitchen area, speaking quietly while Torres watched a cartoon with half-lidded eyes. You didn't have to stay overnight, she said. I wanted to make sure you weren't alone, Roberts replied. Her expression softened. You've shown up more in the last week than I expected. I'm learning, he said honestly. She leaned lightly against the counter, studying him. Yesterday, when you left work without hesitation, that wasn't the version of you I remember. I used to believe everything depended on me being in control, he said. Now I'm realizing some moments matter more than control. Louisa nodded slowly, absorbing the change she saw in him. From the couch, Torres called out, Can you both come here? They walked over together. Torres held up a drawing, a rocket surrounded by 3 small figures standing beneath it. That's us, he explained proudly. We're watching the launch. Roberts felt something tighten gently in his chest as he studied the picture. I like it, he said. It looks strong. Torres yawned and rested his head back against the cushion, clearly fighting sleep. Louisa brushed her fingers through his hair. He'll probably be like this for a few days, she said quietly. I don't mind slowing down, Roberts replied. She looked at him carefully. That's new for you. He laughed softly. You keep saying that. Because it's true, she said. Silence settled between them, comfortable rather than heavy. Outside, faint sounds of traffic drifted through the window, reminding them that the world kept moving even while their small space felt still. After a while, Torres drifted back to sleep. Roberts lowered his voice. I've been thinking a lot about what it means to be present, he said. Not just physically, but emotionally. Louisa listened without interrupting. I used to measure everything by progress, he continued. Now I'm realizing presence isn't about moving forward. Sometimes it's about staying exactly where you are. Her gaze softened. That's something most people don't learn until much later. He smiled faintly. Maybe I'm finally catching up. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she walked to the window, watching the morning light shift across the street below. You know, she said quietly, after we separated, I convinced myself I didn't need anyone to share this journey with me. It was easier to focus on stability. And now, he asked gently. She turned back toward him. Now I'm allowing myself to believe that people can grow, that second chances don't always repeat the same mistakes. Her honesty lingered between them. Robert stepped closer, but kept a respectful distance. I don't expect everything to change overnight, he said. I just want to keep showing up, one day at a time. She nodded. That's all I'm asking for. A faint sound from the couch made them glance back. Torres shifted in his sleep, clutching the drawing he had made earlier. Roberts lowered himself into a chair nearby, watching him quietly. The peaceful rhythm of the apartment felt grounding in a way nothing else did. His phone buzzed once in his pocket. He glanced at the screen briefly. Several missed calls from work, messages waiting for responses. He silenced it without opening anything. Louisa noticed. You don't have to ignore your responsibilities, she said gently. I'm not ignoring them, he replied. I'm just choosing where I need to be right now. She didn't argue. Time passed slowly, tea cooling in their hands, sunlight shifting across the room. Eventually Torres woke again, smiling faintly when he saw them still there. You stayed, he said to Roberts. I told you I would, Roberts replied. The boy grinned before reaching for his crayons, beginning another small drawing with careful concentration. Louisa watched the scene quietly, something in her expression softer than before, less guarded, more hopeful. For Roberts, the quiet aftermath of the hospital scare felt more meaningful than any dramatic turning point. It wasn't a grand declaration or a sudden transformation. It was simply the realization that being present, truly present, brought a kind of peace he had spent years searching for without knowing it. And as Torres colored quietly between them, Roberts understood that this calm, steady rhythm was exactly where he wanted to be. Roberts chose a quiet cafe near the marina to meet Iris. It wasn't a place filled with executives or investors, just a simple space where the sound of waves blended softly with low conversation. He arrived early, sitting at a small table near the window, watching boats drift slowly across the water. When Iris walked in, she looked composed as always, elegant, confident, and aware enough to sense the seriousness behind his message. You picked a calm place, she said as she sat down. I thought it would help us talk honestly, Roberts replied. She studied his face for a moment before speaking again. You've made a decision, haven't you? He hesitated, then nodded. I think I have. The server brought coffee, setting the cups gently on the table before stepping away. Neither of them touched their drinks right away. I don't want this conversation to feel like a confrontation, Roberts began. You deserve clarity and respect. Iris's expression remained steady. Then start with the truth. He took a breath. Over the last few weeks, I've realized I've been moving toward our future because it made sense, not because I felt completely aligned with it. She listened without interrupting, her posture calm. I care about you, he continued. You've been supportive, understanding, and strong in ways I truly admire. But something inside me has changed, and I can't ignore it. Her gaze softened slightly, though sadness flickered beneath her composure. Is there someone else? She asked gently. Roberts chose his words carefully. There's a part of my past that came back into my life, and it made me see things differently, not in a dramatic way, just honestly. She held his gaze for a long moment before nodding slowly. I wondered if that might be the case. You did? He asked. She gave a small smile. You look alive when you talk about whatever has been on your mind lately. It's subtle, but it's there. The honesty in her voice eased some of the tension he carried. I never wanted to hurt you, he said quietly. I know, she replied. And I never wanted you to stay in something just because it looked right from the outside. Silence settled between them, filled with understanding rather than conflict. We built something strong, Iris continued, but maybe we built it around ambition more than emotion. Roberts nodded. That's exactly how it feels. She traced the rim of her cup thoughtfully. I always believed our partnership would grow into something deeper over time, she said. But growth doesn't always move in the direction we expect. Her calm acceptance surprised him. You're not angry? He asked. She let out a quiet breath. Of course I'm disappointed, but anger wouldn't change the truth. She looked at him gently. You've always valued honesty. I respect that you're choosing it now." He felt a mix of gratitude and sadness. "You deserve someone who feels completely certain about you. And you deserve to follow what makes you feel whole," she replied. The words carried a finality that neither of them needed to explain. Outside the window, a boat passed slowly across the water, leaving ripples behind it. Roberts watched the movement for a moment before returning his attention to her. "I don't regret our time together," he said. "You've taught me a lot about balance, discipline, and partnership." She smiled faintly. "And you've shown me what ambition looks like when it's focused." They sat quietly for a while, letting the conversation settle. "What happens now?" she asked. "I think we take different paths," he said gently, "with respect." She nodded, accepting the reality without hesitation. "I had a feeling this moment might come," she admitted. "Not because something was wrong, but because something felt incomplete." Her honesty made him look at her with renewed appreciation. "I hope we can still respect each other," he said. "I don't see why we wouldn't," she replied. "Endings don't have to be loud to be meaningful." She reached across the table, giving his hand a brief squeeze, a gesture filled with closure rather than romance. "I want you to be happy," she said softly, "not just successful." He swallowed, grateful for the grace she offered. "Thank you for understanding." She stood, gathering her bag. "Take care of yourself, Roberts," she said, "and take care of whatever future you're choosing." "I will," he replied. They walked toward the door together, pausing briefly at the entrance. For a moment they simply looked at each other, two people who shared a chapter that had shaped them, now stepping into different stories. "Goodbye," Iris said gently. "Goodbye," he answered. She walked away with steady confidence, disappearing into the crowd along the marina. Roberts remained where he was for a few seconds longer, feeling a quiet mix of relief and sadness. There were no raised voices, no dramatic scenes, just the calm understanding that sometimes letting go was the most honest choice two people could make. As he stepped outside, the ocean breeze brushed lightly against his face. For the first time since the engagement plans began, he felt lighter, not because something had ended, but because he had chosen truth over expectation. The days after his conversation with Iris moved quietly without the rush Roberts was used to. Work continued, meetings, decisions, emails waiting for responses, but the pace felt different now. He found himself leaving the office earlier, choosing moments that grounded him instead of chasing every opportunity that appeared. One afternoon he arrived at Arden and Vale Fine Jewelry carrying a small box of colored pencils he had picked up on the way. Torres spotted him through the glass and ran toward the counter, excitement lighting up his face. "You came," the boy said. "I brought reinforcements for your rocket missions," Roberts replied, opening the box. Torres's eyes widened. "These have gold." "They seemed important," Roberts said with a smile. Louisa watched from behind the counter, her expression thoughtful but warmer than it had been weeks ago. "You're becoming a regular visitor," she said as Roberts approached. "I hope that's all right," he replied. "It is," she said softly, "as long as it stays real." Torres spread the pencils across the counter, immediately starting a new drawing. Roberts sat beside him, asking questions about each detail, the engines, the stars, the tiny figures he added carefully at the bottom. Louisa finished assisting another customer before joining them. She leaned lightly against the counter, observing how naturally Roberts listened to Torres's endless explanations. "You're more patient than I expected," she said quietly. "I'm learning from him," Roberts replied. "He takes time to imagine things fully." Torres looked up proudly. "Rockets need planning." Roberts nodded. "That's true." For a while, the three of them existed in an easy rhythm. Torres drawing, Louisa organizing displays, Roberts helping choose colors for a new spaceship design. Nothing felt forced. The calm felt earned. Later, when Torres wandered toward a nearby display with another staff member, Louisa spoke softly. "I heard about you and Iris," she said. Roberts didn't look surprised. "News travels fast," she told a mutual friend, Louisa explained gently. "She spoke highly of you." He exhaled slowly. "She handled everything with more grace than I deserved." Louisa studied him carefully. "And how do you feel now?" "Relieved," he admitted, "but also aware of the weight of everything that's changing." She nodded. "Second chances aren't light," she said. "They come with responsibility." "I know," he replied. "That's why I'm taking things slowly." Her gaze softened slightly. "I can see that." A brief silence followed as Torres returned, holding up another drawing. "This one is the biggest rocket yet," he announced. Roberts laughed quietly. "Every design gets better." Torres handed him the drawing without hesitation. "You can keep it," Roberts accepted it carefully, feeling the trust behind such a simple gesture. "You're building quite a collection," Louisa said. "They remind me to slow down," he replied. She smiled faintly at that. As the afternoon faded into early evening, the store grew quieter. Louisa began closing tasks while Torres finished coloring at the counter. Roberts leaned against the glass display, watching them both. The warmth of the space felt different from anything he experienced in his penthouse or office, less perfect but more real. "Can I ask you something?" he said to Louisa. She looked up. "Of course. Do you believe people truly change?" he asked. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she glanced at Torres, then back at Roberts. "I believe people can grow when they face themselves honestly," she said. "Change isn't about grand gestures. It's about consistency." He nodded, absorbing her words. "I'm not expecting everything to go back to what it was," he said quietly. "I just want the chance to build something new, at the right pace." Her expression softened further, though a hint of caution remained. "That's all any second chance really asks for." Torres tugged at Roberts' sleeve again. "Can we go outside for 5 minutes before we leave?" he asked. Louisa hesitated briefly, then nodded. 5 minutes. They stepped onto the sidewalk together. The evening air carried a calm energy, the city lights beginning to glow as the sky shifted toward dusk. Torres ran ahead, pretending to launch his rocket, drawing into the air. Roberts watched him with a quiet smile. "You're becoming important to him," Louisa said softly. "He's becoming important to me too," Roberts replied. She studied his face, searching for signs of doubt. Instead, she saw steadiness, something she hadn't seen in him years ago. "Second chances aren't easy," she said again. "I know," he replied, "but they feel worth it." Torres ran back toward them, laughing as he described his imaginary launch. Louisa slipped her hands into her coat pockets, standing beside Roberts as they watched him. The weight of everything they had been through lingered between them, not as pressure but as quiet understanding. They weren't rushing toward a perfect ending. They were simply moving forward, one honest moment at a time. The morning Roberts walked back into Arden and Vale Fine Jewelry felt different from every visit before. There was no urgency in his step, no pressure resting on his shoulders. Instead, he carried a quiet certainty, the kind that came not from expectation, but from understanding. Louisa was arranging a new display near the front when she noticed him. Her eyes softened slightly, though curiosity lingered behind her calm expression. "You look peaceful," she said as he approached. "I feel peaceful," he replied. Torres sat nearby, building a tower from small display boxes while humming to himself. When he saw Roberts, he waved enthusiastically. "You're early today. I had something important to do," Roberts said, glancing briefly at Louisa. She noticed the seriousness in his tone. "Do you want to talk somewhere quieter?" she asked. He nodded. They moved toward a private seating area near the back of the store, the same place where difficult truths had been spoken weeks earlier. This time, however, the atmosphere felt lighter. Roberts reached into his jacket pocket and placed a small velvet box on the table between them. Louisa looked at it but didn't touch it. "That doesn't look like one of ours," she said carefully. "It isn't," he replied. "I picked it up from a small artisan jeweler yesterday." Her eyes lifted to meet his, cautious but attentive. "Before you open it," he continued, "I want you to know this isn't about grand gestures or fixing the past. It's about honesty." She nodded slowly, giving him permission to continue. Roberts opened the box himself, revealing a simple silver band, understated, elegant, free from the brilliance he once thought was necessary to prove devotion. Louisa studied it quietly. "It's simple," she said. "That's why I chose it," he replied. "I spent years believing impressive things mattered most, but everything that's felt real lately has been quiet, steady." Torres wandered closer, curiosity shining in his eyes. "Is that a rocket ring?" he asked. Roberts chuckled softly. "Not exactly." Louisa smiled faintly at her son before turning her attention back to Roberts. "What does it mean?" she asked gently. He took a breath. "It means I'm not chasing perfection anymore. I'm choosing something honest, something built slowly, with you, if you're willing." Her gaze didn't waver, though emotion flickered softly beneath her composure. "You're asking for a lot," she said. "I know," he replied. "And I don't expect an answer because of the past. I'm asking because of the person I'm becoming now." Silence settled between them, not heavy, just thoughtful. Torres leaned against the table, watching them both. "Mama, are you smiling?" he asked. Louisa laughed quietly, surprised by the observation. "Maybe a little." Roberts's voice softened. "I'm not asking you to forget what happened before. I'm asking for the chance to build something new, with patience, honesty, and the kind of presence I didn't understand back then. She lowered her eyes briefly, considering his words. The store's soft music filled the space while customers moved quietly in the distance, unaware of the moment unfolding here. "You've changed," she said finally. "I've learned," he replied, "mostly from watching you and Torres." Her expression warmed at that. "You used to move so fast," she said. "Every decision felt like a race. I thought speed meant success," he admitted. "Now I know slowing down can mean growth." Torres tugged gently on Louisa's sleeve. "Are we building a team?" he asked. Louisa glanced at him, then back at Roberts. "Maybe we already are," she said softly. She reached toward the small, silver band, lifting it carefully from the box. It caught the light in a subtle way, not loud, not demanding attention, just quietly present. "It's beautiful," she said. Roberts watched her reaction carefully. "It doesn't have to mean anything today," he added. "I just wanted you to know where my heart is." She looked up at him, searching his face for any sign of hesitation. Instead, she saw steadiness, a calm confidence that hadn't been there before. "What happens if we say yes to this?" she asked quietly. "We keep building slowly," he replied. "No pressure, no expectations beyond showing up for each other." Torres clapped softly, unaware of the deeper meaning behind their conversation. "I like slow rockets," he declared. Louisa laughed gently, the sound warm and genuine. She set the ring back into the box, her fingers lingering on the velvet edge. "You're not the same person who walked away years ago," she said. "I don't want to be," Roberts answered. The honesty in his voice made her pause. Customers moved through the store, soft footsteps echoing across the floor. For a moment it felt like the entire world had narrowed to this quiet corner. Two people standing at the edge of a new beginning. Louisa closed the velvet box and held it between her hands. "You've given me something to think about," she said gently. "That's all I hoped for," Roberts replied. Torres grabbed both of their hands suddenly, pulling them closer together. "We should celebrate with ice cream," he announced. Roberts laughed softly. "That sounds like a good plan." Louisa looked at their joined hands, the simple, natural connection that had grown over time instead of arriving all at once. She didn't give an answer yet, but the softness in her eyes told Roberts that the possibility he had once lost was no longer out of reach. Evening light filtered through the windows of Arden and Vale fine jewelry, turning the glass displays into soft reflections of gold and silver. The store had grown quieter as closing time approached, leaving only the gentle sound of footsteps and the low hum of music in the background. Louisa stood near the back counter, the small velvet box resting in her hands. Roberts waited a few steps away, giving her space. He didn't rush her, didn't fill the silence with explanations. For the first time in years, patience felt natural to him. Torres sat on a stool nearby, swinging his legs as he colored another rocket, occasionally glancing up at them with curiosity. Louisa took a slow breath. "I've been thinking about everything you said," she began softly. Roberts nodded. "Take all the time you need." She looked down at the silver band before meeting his eyes again. "When you left years ago, I promised myself I would never ask someone to stay if their heart wasn't fully present," she said. "And when you came back into our lives, I told myself I would protect the peace we built here." "I understand," he replied gently. She stepped closer, her voice steady but warm. "But over the last few weeks, I've seen you slow down. I've seen you show up, not just for me, but for Torres, and that matters more than anything you could promise." Torres looked up at his name, smiling quietly. Louisa continued, "Second chances aren't about pretending nothing happened. They're about choosing differently." Roberts listened carefully, his expression calm. "So," she said, opening the velvet box again, "my answer isn't about the past. It's about what I see in you now." She lifted the silver band slightly, letting it catch the soft light. "Yes." The word was simple, but it filled the space with a quiet warmth that felt deeper than celebration. Roberts exhaled slowly, relief and gratitude moving through him at once. "Are you sure?" he asked softly. She nodded. "I'm choosing this because it feels honest, not because it looks perfect." Torres jumped off his stool, clapping his hands. "We're a team," he declared, grabbing both of them before either could respond. Roberts laughed quietly as Torres pulled their hands together. The small gesture felt more meaningful than any grand moment he could have imagined. Louisa smiled at her son, then back at Roberts. "This doesn't mean everything becomes easy overnight," she said. "I wouldn't expect it to," he replied. "We'll keep building slowly." She slipped the silver band onto her finger, studying it for a moment. The simplicity suited her, understated, genuine, real. "It feels right," she said quietly. Roberts watched her, emotion softening his expression. "Thank you for trusting me again." She shook her head gently. "Trust grows. It doesn't appear all at once. Torres tugged at Roberts' sleeve. Does this mean you'll come to more rocket launches? He asked. I wouldn't miss them, Roberts answered. The store lights dimmed slightly as closing time approached. One of the consultants waved goodnight before leaving, giving them privacy without interrupting the moment. Louisa leaned against the counter, studying Roberts thoughtfully. You know, she said, years ago I thought love had to be dramatic to be meaningful. And now? He asked. Now I think it's about consistency, she replied. About choosing each other every day in small ways. He nodded. That's the kind of love I want to build. Torres held up his newest drawing, a rocket surrounded by 3 smiling figures standing side by side. That's us again, he said proudly. Roberts took the drawing carefully. I think this one might be my favorite. Louisa laughed softly, watching the interaction between them. The tension that once filled the space between her and Roberts had softened into something steadier, something grounded in shared understanding. Outside the windows, the city lights began to glow brighter as night settled in. Inside, the quiet warmth of the jewelry store wrapped around them like a calm promise. Louisa slipped her hand into Roberts's, not out of habit or expectation, but because it felt natural. And in that simple, honest moment, the room changed, not through grand declarations, but through the quiet certainty that they were choosing to move forward together. The evening sky stretched wide over the city, painted in soft shades of amber and deep blue as the last customers left Arden and veil-fine jewelry. Inside, the lights dimmed to a gentle glow, reflecting off glass displays and polished surfaces that now felt less like a showroom and more like a place where stories quietly unfolded. Roberts stood near the entrance, watching Louisa finish locking one of the cases while Torres gathered his drawings into a neat stack. The silver band rested lightly on Louisa's finger, catching the light only when she moved, simple, steady, and real. Ready? She asked, slipping her bag over her shoulder. Torres nodded eagerly. Ice cream first, he reminded them. Roberts laughed softly. I wouldn't dare forget. They stepped outside together, the air cool but calm. Streetlights flickered on one by one, and distant laughter drifted from a nearby cafe. The city moved at its usual pace, unaware that something meaningful had quietly settled into place between them. As they walked, Torres held both of their hands, swinging gently between them while describing his next rocket design, one that would travel farther than any before. It needs a strong team, he explained seriously. Roberts glanced at Louisa, their eyes meeting with a shared understanding. I think we're building one, he said. She smiled, her expression softer than it had been in years. Slowly, she added, they stopped at a small ice cream stand on the corner, choosing simple flavors and sitting at an outdoor table beneath warm string lights. Torres talked non-stop, his energy returning as he laughed and sketched ideas on a napkin. Roberts leaned back slightly, watching Louisa as she listened to her son, the quiet patience in her movements, the ease in her smile. For years he had chased moments filled with applause and attention, believing they defined happiness. Now, sitting at a small table with melting ice cream and scattered drawings, he felt more grounded than ever before. You're quiet, Louisa said, noticing the way he watched them. I'm just taking this in, he replied. It feels real, she nodded. Real isn't always loud. Torres held up his napkin, drawing proudly. This one is our home base, he said. Robert studied it, a simple shape surrounded by stars. Look strong, he said. It's where rockets come back, Torres explained. The words stayed with Roberts long after the boy returned to his ice cream. After a while, they began walking again, the path leading them toward a quiet overlook above the water. The city lights reflected across the surface like scattered constellations, and the breeze carried the faint scent of the ocean. Torres ran ahead, pretending to guide an invisible spacecraft through the air. Louisa slowed her steps, falling slightly behind with Roberts. You seem different tonight, she said. I am, he admitted. For the first time, I'm not thinking about the next milestone. I'm just here. She slipped her hand into his, the gesture natural and unforced. That's all I ever wanted, she said softly. He looked at her, grateful for the second chance she had chosen to give. I used to believe love had to be impressive to matter, he said. Now I realize it just has to be honest. She smiled gently. Honesty lasts longer. They reached the overlook where Torres stood waiting, arms stretched wide as if preparing for launch. The sky above them darkened slowly, stars beginning to appear one by one. Count down, Torres shouted playfully. Roberts laughed, joining in. 3, 2, 1. The boy jumped, pretending to fly, his laughter echoing across the quiet space. Louisa watched him with warmth, then turned to Roberts. Thank you for coming back, she said. Thank you for letting me, he replied. They stood together in silence for a moment, the city stretching endlessly before them. No crowds, no expectations, just the steady rhythm of a life built on patience rather than speed. Torres ran back toward them, grabbing their hands again. "We did it," he declared. The rocket landed. Roberts glanced at Louisa, understanding the deeper meaning behind the simple words. "Yes," he said softly. It did. As they began walking home, the glow of the streetlights guided their path. The future ahead didn't feel rushed or perfect. It felt open, shaped by choices made one honest step at a time. And in that quiet golden light, Roberts finally understood something he had spent years searching for. Love didn't need to be loud to be powerful. Sometimes it only needed patience, honesty, and the courage to come back and stay. If this story meant something to you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts below. Your support keeps these stories alive, and I'll see you in the next one.